A judge has granted special counsel Jack Smith's request earlier this week to drop all charges against President-elect Trump in the federal case over his alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And I had been on the edge of my seat. Will the judge grant the request? I mean, Jack Smith is being so polite about it, requesting an end to this thing. If you can't tell, and you probably should be able to, this entire thing frustrates me to no end. The fact that Jack Smith would have to wind this stuff down. The fact that Judge Tanya Chutkan very politely accepted. Like every bit of this is so stupid and condescending. Just the very fact that we're not going to get any justice in this case or in any of the others because Donald Trump won, I guess. And so no justice, doesn't matter how obvious the crimes were. It's just not going to happen. We're never going to know what actually happened. But I'm gonna try to get it together and we're gonna go through the various components of this. He had, Smith had written in a filing seeking the dismissal of the election interference case that while prosecutors' view of Trump's alleged crimes have not changed, and I don't think it should for you either, the circumstances surrounding his trial have. His victory, quote, sets at odds two fundamental and compelling national interests: the constitutional requirement that the president should not be unduly encumbered, and a commitment to the rule of law. And I guess, 100-mile high view on it. Yes, those two things are in conflict. He shouldn't be unduly encumbered, and we should have a commitment to the rule of law. But I don't think that those two things are equal. I think the fundamental rule of law, particularly for the guy who's gonna be in charge of so much of it, seems more important on some level. But anyway, he says this outcome is not based on the merits or strength of the case against the defendant, but that, a sitting president can't be prosecuted and the Supreme Court has decided that he's a king. And so, you have the rule of law here, Adrienne, and then you have everything that we have decided is more important on the other hand. And so what do you make of the fact that this is apparently done?
It's incredibly disappointing. We heard for months, years about how no one is above the law, about how everyone will be prosecuted who committed an offense. And then we're seeing this very swift action in terms of Jack Smith and DOJ just going ahead and relenting, just allowing Trump to get away scot-free. I don't care if he's going to be president. I don't care if he's going to work at Wendy's. Whatever he does, he should face actual consequences. And I'll be honest, I, to a large extent, kind of blame DOJ, Merrick Garland for this. We had the insurrection, January 6, 2021. It wasn't until November of 2022 that Jack Smith was appointed as special counsel. That was 22 months that went by that DOJ just sat on their hands when they had plenty of evidence, plenty of information to bring charges. And I get the thought that we needed to be very wise before we move forward, especially against someone who was a former president. At the same time, the evidence was there. Why wasn't there actual action?
Yeah, it's a violent coup. And I know there's other components. There's the fake electors and there's all of that stuff, but they left his rally and invaded the Capitol. And Merrick Garland's like, I'm gonna keep my eye on that. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I want to ask you a question though.
Yeah.
So with the hindsight that we have now, like my knee-jerk reaction, I think, is in a similar league as yours, that I place blame literally everywhere. But I do think the DOJ, Merrick Garland, all that, I think a lot of blame needs to be placed on them. Now, and with the issue being that, like, the closer we get to the election, well, it becomes harder, he's the candidate. But let's zoom out for a second. Because of how weak they are and because everybody's ready to be like, oh, we don't want to look unfair. Would there ever have been a point where we would have maybe had justice? Like if they'd started a year earlier, they'd started 16 months earlier, he could plausibly say, and certainly his defenders would say, well, at the latter end of that, he's now the candidate. Earlier, well, he's gonna be the candidate. He was the president. Like, was there ever a point where these people would grow judicial balls? What do you think?
I do not think that that would have been the case in large part because I don't think that our leadership wanted to do this at all in any way. I do think at the upper echelon, there is this thought that we don't want to hold everyone accountable. We've seen former presidents engage in all sorts of war crimes and just be allowed to retire with a thank you for your service. I think it's almost in that same regard here of what if we start actually prosecuting US presidents for their crimes, then, oh no, that could actually set precedent. And so I really don't think that there was truly an invested effort in this, which is almost indicative of being accurate given how quickly Jack Smith is acting. And also, let's be mindful of the fact that this case could be stayed until the presidency is over. It doesn't have to be dismissed.
That is true. Now, I guess one wrinkle in a similar area is that it has been dismissed by Judge Chutkan without prejudice, meaning that theoretically it could be reopened after he's president. And to that, so I want to say that is technically true, and also, like what? Like if we get to the point where we can reopen a case against Trump after he's president, then I guess we've survived, and that's good. But at that point, Donald Trump is gonna be a withered husk of a man. Let's keep it real. He's probably not even gonna be alive at that point. Like it is technically true, and it seems so utterly irrelevant at that point. Again, so that's my thoughts. Feel free to disagree.
Oh, well, John, actually, I want to know what country do you think he's going to relocate to? I'm sure ones without extradition treaties or any realistic, reality that they would actually enforce those treaties. Because no, the man isn't going to be prosecuted. This is the closest that we got, and I just
don't
so
think.
disgusting the thought that it was so quickly dispensed of.
Yeah, and let me be clear. What I'm saying is not, I only care about it if it stops him from being president. No, I like distinctly, independently care about it. If we're still a country, if they want to reopen it, they can reopen it, and they should. He broke the law. If he has to spend his last 27 minutes of his life in prison, I'm fine with that. It doesn't matter nearly as much, I think, at that point. The longer he gets to walk free with the novel's length list of crimes that he's committed in his life, I just can't invest as much of my spirit into it. I want to finally mention Stephen Chung, Trump's spokesperson, celebrated the motion as a quote, major victory for the rule of law. And I only read that to you because you should get used to statements like that in this brave new era we're in, where people with a huge amount of power will say things that are intentionally the exact opposite of the truth, okay? I, for one, welcome our new Orwellian period of American politics, but yeah. And also, just for fun, let's cut to the status of the other Trump criminal cases. So Jack Smith is, of course, dropped the January 6 cases. That's done. Okay, the election interference case in Georgia, it is currently halted because sure, it's important whether we know if the president tried to rig Georgia's election, but I'm interested in this DA Fani Willis stuff. I think that's a more pressing constitutional issue. We don't ever need justice on what the president did. She had a lover. And obviously so of course, we'll probably never find out about that. Classified documents case has already been dismissed, even though he did it. He did the crime. He's not even denying that he stole the documents. Doesn't matter, okay? And the hush money case has concluded. He's already been found guilty, but the sentencing has been postponed indefinitely. So I guess that too could come back in 2028 or 2029 for all the difference it'll mean then. So anyway, just there's a lot of things to be frustrated about in American politics. I think this is pretty near the top of that list. Anyway, for me at least.